movies, let me welcome you to Cordkillers Reckoning. The world of entertainment, it has turned upside down. And we're just trying to find out how to watch what we want, where we want, whenever we want. I'm Tom Merritt, and I have a question for you, Brian Brushwood. Where's the good stuff?
Mr. Merritt, why did you start off sounding like Mr. Rourke and then give it up? I was all working on my tattoo voice.
I started as Rourke and then took a journey through Shatner, and then I'm not even sure where I landed.
I heard the first few syllables. I'm like, gathering up all my bits. I know where this is going. Oh, no, I guess he left without me.
The plane.
Yeah, he's on a plane, a different plane.
Yes, he's on a different plane entirely. Well, what it means, dear friends, is that now that William and Scooper Nova Girl are here watching live, we need to tell you the supply run.
Heck yeah.
Supply run.
Different articles over the past few months and years have talked about Netflix's request that some content be optimized for casual viewing. We've talked about this on Cordkillers before. If you've given Netflix your full attention on some shows, you might have found that show a bit slow or repetitive or expository. And that's possibly because it was designed for someone who is doing something else while watching it. I want to get a couple of misconceptions out of the way before we discuss. Not all Netflix shows are like this. So if you're like, wait, I watched this and it wasn't like that. Sometimes Netflix goes with a normal, you're going to pay attention formula. So not every single Netflix show follows this, but some of them do. And this isn't new. If you're like, that's not new, you're right. Broadcast television was often produced this way for different reasons, because you would get interrupted by the kids or have to get up and go to the bathroom, and you couldn't pause television back in those days. Whereas Netflix, you can pause a Netflix show, but Netflix is like, yeah, but you're doing other things while you're watching it. So the question we're going to deal with today is this bad? Is it the death of television? Have we reached idiocracy when a Netflix show has to have a character say they're sad while they're crying to a background of mournful violins? Brian, what do you think?
Man, every so often you throw me some like college dorm room level galaxy brain bait, and I have to seize it. So I'm gonna run off and go full Brian Brushwood here, and you tell me when I've hit the edge of the map.
All right.
Here's what it looks like
Brian,
to me.
Run.
Here's what it looks like to me. The thing that you just expressed is people worried about a product degrading. And so, spoiler alert, we're talking about branding here, right? A brand is simply the thing that you expect to get when you think of a thing, right? So in the case of broadcast television, or cable, you would think of a certain type of programming on HBO, and you would think of a different type of programming on QVC. Now, we're entering an age where all of humanity's brains are getting augmented, because our brains are built to live in a village with 150 people. Look up Dunbar's number or read the essay, The Monkey Sphere, about it.
Or just ask the other 149 people in your village.
Or who exist in the entire planet. Not any of the fictional characters, but the actual people. So knowing that we're not built to handle too many real things, in the case of like in the 1980s monoculture, it was very important that you have a certain flavor for your broadcast television, because it was going to be the same thing, everyone, reliably, the same time, same place, all in the family had to look and feel the same way or whatever. And to be honest, the thing that people are afraid of is already what happened back in the day. They had to make things a certain level of milquetoast because people had to do it. The soap operas had to be exactly like this. Something that did not merit your full attention, but instead was intended to be on in the background while you were doing the chores. So this is not a new concept, but it is new to see it out loud being applied to a high prestige brand like Netflix. Now, historically, 10 years ago, Brian would immediately say this is the death of Netflix's reputation. This is a terrible idea. However, we're also going through what I think of as the great sorting. Now we are all getting comfortable with the idea of robots having our backs and making sure that our experiences cover that bandwidth, that amount of effort that it would take. We have fewer channels to flip through, and that's the way we like it, because all of them are relevant to our interests. They're all in our language. They're all speaking to our life experience. We just are picking from the flavors of that. And beneath that layer of the stack, robots are doing all of the filtering and now increasingly the translation or the, aging up or aging down actors, and eventually, characters who look like characters in your real life are going to be subbed in so that you can find them more interesting or as gentle nudges for you to get the best narrative experience. So knowing that that's coming, essentially all that's come out is that Netflix intends to match your modality even better, which means they have a momentary gap in inventory. They are all filled up in high prestige content that will look the same to everyone. What they lack are time fillers, dare I say, the same niche that we are occupying as podcasters. I guarantee you, Tom, outside of Amos, who's being paid to do it, there's not one person sitting down and giving us their full attention.
And man, do the emails show it. No, I'm just kidding.
Including the people who are watching the stream right now, because I'm
only half kidding, though. Like, how many times have we gotten an email on this or other shows that's like, halfway through the email, they go, "Oh, wait, you just mentioned this."
Exactly. Yeah. Right. Well, and so, as you know, the rules for especially narrative podcasting, when it comes to World's Greatest Con, which I'm going to use as an avatar of what I believe to be excellent prestige podcasting, but even then, we can't assume people are sitting there doing nothing but listening to the podcast. We have to assume they're doing something else, which means we cannot have a pronoun be more than 10 to 20 words away from its antecedent. By the second sentence, we no longer can remember if there's two characters, which he I'm talking about. So that is a small structural nudge, and I don't think it takes away from World's Greatest Con that we have to accommodate the fact that you're constantly anchored, and we get to play with sound effects that keep you in a sound space, so you get a sense of place on all of this. And so in that regard, all Netflix seems to be doing is saying there is a gap here for people in this situation. We want to fill it. Now, notice what they didn't say is we love this kind of content and we want to do it. They're not in the business of loving any of their content except for their very expensive prestige content. They are in the business of branding themselves and following through on that brand as one thing, the place you go to fill the time. And for some reason, like I guarantee you, there's going to be device-specific recommendations. If you're on a mobile device, it's going to recommend certain types of content algorithmically. That'll be different. It'll probably know, it probably already knows the size of your television, the level of whether or not you have HDR and so on. And so it matches its suggestions to it. And this is them simply admitting there are times that we can tell from behaviors. And again, they can't actively tell. The algorithms notice that the behaviors say, I know they think that they want to watch TV right now, but they do not want anything too complicated. Do we have anything that matches ironing clothes or packing to leave, half watching, maybe playing Hearthstone while watching it, looking at you, Brian Brushwood? Then they want something to fill that, and that's what this is.
Three things I think that I want to point out. One is Netflix is not saying anything. You said like what they're saying here. Netflix isn't saying. Netflix isn't talking about this. This is we found out from talking to writers, or we can tell by watching, etc. So Netflix isn't out there talking about this, and I think that that's important to keep in mind. Two, it's not a thing they're going to do. They're doing this. Like they've been doing it for years. And then three, I think they're doing it most of the time versus saying like, well, most of our shows are prestige and require your full attention. We know you think you want your full attention. I think it's the opposite. I think they're like, we know most of you aren't looking at the screen while you're watching Netflix. And so the majority of our shows are meant to be consumed where you're not even looking at the screen. You're listening and occasionally glancing at the screen. And I think that's what causes some people to get upset, right? they're like, well, you're writing Drek. And I think Netflix's answer to bring it back to what you're talking about is like, seems to work.
Well, there are certain times that the consumer really does not want a mirror held up to themselves. In this case, they don't want to ever see, we know you're only paying half attention, and we know that blah, blah, blah. Another thing where we see this is when it comes to social contagion or hysterical events. If somebody has an illness, we saw this during the fentanyl handling crisis. For some reason, law enforcement who got anywhere near fentanyl had fainting and dizzy spells, and yet pharmacists were able to handle it with bare hands all days. But you must not say aloud that this is a hysterical, anxiety-inducing social contagion, because that's one of those things that people aren't comfortable having a mirror held up to. So likewise, past Brian would say, knowing that this was a thing, or this type of middling quality content would be a negative stroke 10 years ago, but thanks to increasingly algorithmic perfection, we'll never notice it. All you'll notice is that Netflix just happens to be the right flavor at the right time. And to be honest,
I think you'll still notice it, though.
Well,
and the reason I say that is you're going to have someone tell you outside of the algorithm, hey, Brian, you've got to watch this show. It's awesome. And then you're going to watch it not in the same predicament. So either you're going to be paying full attention to a show that they weren't, or vice versa. They were paying full attention and you're not. And then you're going to go, that show sucked. Why did I watch that? Granted, that may be the exception, not the rule.
I think what you're describing are communication artifacts, right? So at first people will recommend, but then what'll happen is the market they'll go through the pain of each person will go through the pain exactly once of making a recommendation, and then hearing the story of like, I sat down and watched it, this is total garbage. And then they're going to self-reflect and ask why. And then going forward, that will culturally become part of how we make recommendations, is we will also explain the set and setting in which we had a good time.
Like, wait, is it a full attention show or not?
And we already kind of do that.
And you might still choose to watch it, but just in a different situation. Like, oh, I won't watch that till I'm ready to pack for my trip, right? I won't try to sit down and watch that. Like, I think this is a bit of a generational thing, because I'm seeing some comments in the chat that are like, you should watch video, you listen to audio. And it's like, the younger generation don't agree. They make no distinction. Video, audio, it could all be in the background.
I think, I do believe that there are certain, I don't know, for lack of a better word, religious structures in our brains that just map onto different things. For example, culturally, I'm seeing a wave of neo-Victorianism regarding propriety and gossip and reputation in the teenage generation. And there's little minor enforcements about, like, if somebody's talking about a video, it is very gauche to pull out the phone in a social environment, because I guess everyone sees right through me. This is Josie talking right now. Josie will give a disapproving look if somebody tries to force media in. And when we watch something, she is very respectful, because out of the corner of your eye, everybody knows that you could tell visibly if you're pulling out your phone and looking at something else. As a matter of fact, that tees into my recommendation when we get to that.
Also, Mookow pointing out that there is such a thing as audio description. We've talked about that before. Netflix has it. But that is a different way of consuming. That is meant for, I'm not looking at all, perhaps because I don't have vision, right? Or I'm visually impaired. And I know, Brian, you've used it when you're running and you're like, I can't look at the phone. I'm jogging. It's in my pocket. I'm not going to be looking. That's not what we're talking about here. This is a different class, which is, I will be able to glance when the explosion happens and I want to see the people walking slowly away from it. I will be able to glance when the plane crash is happening and I want to see the amazing effects. I just won't be looking all the time. So I need to have something going that makes me able to track it between the times that I look. It's a different somewhat specific, but I also think very common way of consuming media.
If we've got 2 minutes, we could take another lap. We can actually go meta and do the thing that we're talking about by repeating it again. But another way of thinking about it is you see the same kind of structural nudges in various flavors of YouTube content. And I noticed how much of a parallel there is in the process of whiskey distilling, right? So let's say there's a particular flavor, a 12-year aged Scotch or something that's a blended whiskey, right? So if we think about the very base level, you make alcohol, you get a beer, right? There's alcohol in it, and it's based on these barleys, these hops, or whatever. And so you don't really sweat it if the beer is a little bit to this or a little bit to that, because that's just the beginning. Likewise, YouTube, you got live streams. That's the beer. It's like you're going to talk for 2.5, 3 hours because you're recording a thing that's eventually going to be one of your long form videos. That's the beer. Then it gets distilled. You're like, okay, here's the heart of it. This is the multiple takes at the opening. This is the whatever. Now you get a tight, let's say 10 to 15 minute episode of a thing. That'd be similar to in distilling. You distill the beer and you get the alcohol out, and the alcohol still has kind of the flavor profile of the hops and the barley and so on. And maybe then, a little too much heads, a little too much tails, the heart's not quite right. You could tell the taste is off, but you're not worried about that because you got time, because now you got to take that and stick it in a particular type of barrel. And the style guide says you're going to get this kind of wood or from this supplier with this story associated with it. Likewise, you're going to take that long form video on YouTube and you're going to figure out, okay, within this 15 minutes, there's between 5 and 8 little 1 minute stories, 1 to 3 minute stories. We're going to start chopping that up into shorts that are even more distilled, single thoughts, right? And then in the whiskey, as this thing ages over 12 years, you got somebody's job who's to do nothing but walk around and say, yep, this one's good. Ooh, this one's a little too much blank, a little too much weight. So they do things to it while it's aged. And then at the very end, they take all those whiskeys and they blend them to get one consistent, precise product that is your shot, your YouTube short, that is exactly what you expect it to be. And so likewise, when we're talking about different types of content, YouTube rewards viewer minutes. So there is a place for certain types of content that are fattier edits, that take more time, that are more luxurious, and maybe they're not a, hey, here's a quick how to set up your lights thing. Maybe they're more a character-driven vibe or whatever. In that case, you want that to last as long as possible to maximize those viewer minutes.
Now I'm thirsty.
I know.
But no, that's a good analogy because some people like a smoky Scotch and some people think it tastes like drinking leather. Some people like drinking leather. So you're going to have different people react differently to those. It's a good metaphor. Another one that Scoopernova Girl put in the comments that I think is really good is it's like baseball games. People don't watch baseball games on TV every single moment for the most part. They listen, and then when they hear the cheers, they look to see if they can catch the home run. And even if they miss it, they catch the replay. Netflix is making the baseball games of dramas and movies, which is you can hear what's going on, and when it gets interesting, you look, and they'll even do a version of replay by being expository and tell you what happened earlier in the story. So,
well, and I guess along those lines, I know we're going long in this segment, but this is some good galaxy talk. When I look at soccer, universally all over the world, historically soccer's been very, very popular, but America loves football, and it occurred to me only a month ago.
Wait, those are the same thing, Brian.
Americans love American football. It only occurred to me last month that there's a structural reason for that, because historically there was never television. You had stadiums that you wanted to fit up to 30 to 50 to 100,000 people at once. So you needed a game that was very spread out because nobody had glasses, which meant that if you wanted to enjoy it, you had to be able to follow the general shape of the dots from very far away to accommodate the entire audience. So if you reduce all the players just to dots, you can still get a sense of who's in a good position about to score and who's not from a broadcast perspective. Whereas the rise of American football happens right around the time of American media, where all of a sudden you want faster action, you want fewer steps to the goal, you want quicker turnarounds. And so that matches the case. And then in the case of basketball, it's a even smaller court so that it could go even faster for the dopamine hits. Anyway, it's so crazy once you begin to see how structure informs content. And that's what we're seeing with Netflix.
Last little bit, tying it back into what you were talking about earlier with the algorithm. I wonder if they get to a point where it's worth doing, because I think it's doable, where you can be served different versions of the same show. We know Brian is sitting down looking at the television and likes those kinds of shows where he pays attention. We will give him that version of this show. Oh, but we know Tom is doing the laundry and just has this on the TV in the bedroom. We'll give him the longer, broader, more expository version of the exact same show. Like you have a script that is expandable. You have an editor that knows how to do both versions, and you can serve up whichever one fits the situation.
And again,
I'm not sure if it's economically viable to do that.
It
necessarily.
It is, and because we already do that. The airline version of movies,
sure,
like they don't make a big deal of,
not on the scale I'm talking about, where it's like an entirely different experience, right? So whether it's going to pay off or whether they'll be like, no, it's just the type of show. We don't need to have 2 edits of shows. Maybe for some shows you do, though. I don't know.
Well, I can see all the way up to, like, for example, if you say White Lotus, there's a certain vibe and feeling you get, rich people being jerks, a funhouse mirror, highly contrasting things, over the top, whatever. Now, whether or not I can totally imagine an algorithmic soup being made by a director where he doesn't really care, because think about casting calls. It's not like the extra that's making $50 a day is uniquely qualified for that. They're totally replaceable or whatever. So in general, imagine one that is regionally appropriate for American audiences, where it's different ethnicities or different dialects or whatever for all of that stuff. Those little nudges, at first, I think there's going to be a lot of falling over to throat clear about it so that nobody is surprised by it. But then everyone will kind of be all like, yeah, no, we all know. Would you stop telling us? And then we won't even notice that
the economics change where it's not costly to make 2 versions because you're synthesizing most of it anyway, right? Like
exactly.
That's likely to. Well, one thing that can't be synthesized is your support. We tried. We said, ChatGPT, just make a bunch of patrons and have them pledge to Patreon. And then Patreon fraud and support was like, that's a bad idea. We really don't want to kick you off of Patreon. Don't do that. So we rely on humans to fund us at patreon.com/Cordkillers.
Yeah, dude. Before that, we had the first disastrous experiment with synthesizing public support ended up with a visit from the Secret Service. Turns out we can't synthesize one thing, and that's your money. So we do need to take your goodwill, your support, your enthusiasm for Galaxy Brain conversations like this one and fund them directly to keep us loud, live, and independent by heading on over to patreon.com/Cordkillers.
Yeah, what we're saying is keep Brian and I out of jail, because we will synthesize patrons if we don't get enough of them.
At some point, monopoly money only goes so far. You get a whole bunch of benefits.
Patreon.com/Cordkillers. Let's move on to the search party. Murderbot, based on the novels by Martha Wells, starring Alexander Skarsgård as Murderbot, is coming to Apple TV May 16th, and they released a trailer. Brian, did you watch the trailer?
I did, because want to talk about good design? Listeners at home, you're not able to see the doc that we're working from that was populated by Tom Merritt, in which this item begins with all caps, "Watch this trailer, Brian." That was my little nudge to let me know that I needed to watch this
Tom
trailer.
Wants me to watch this trailer. What did you think? As someone who hasn't read the books, isn't familiar with the source material, what did you think?
So the only thing I knew going into this is that this is a beloved property, and that the question on everyone's mind was, Well, it's part of the story that he doesn't look like a human. So it did raise an eyebrow when all of a sudden the helmet goes back and a human face is there, which seems to be incongruent. However, what I'm hopeful, and you will tell me whether or not they pulled this off. I remember when this trailer ended thinking, now that's how you do a trailer. Like, they did just enough time to let me know that an entire narrative layer of this will be the media, the interdimensional cable that Murderbot is watching the entire time. And in there will be a lot of the moment meta commentary on a whole bunch of things, and an excuse to go slapstick when that's what the tension demands to release. It will be able to do it in universe in such a way. And I could see all of the lanes that they were ticking off. This is also a Pinocchio story. This is also, I could see the mega narrative. Oh, this is also a scrappy small business that's trying to achieve. Look at this. I just got literal goosebumps as I realized all of the, that's how you do a trailer, Tom. I feel like I much like the full experience, you get it. I feel like I get it already and I can't wait to watch it.
Okay, that is very encouraging, because as somebody who loves the Murderbot series, the fact that we see Alexander Skarsgård's whole head when he takes the mask back was my least objection to this trailer. Like, he probably wouldn't look quite that handsome, Murderbot, but that's fine, because he does have a human head in the stories that he can take his helmet off and he can pass as an augmented human. There's a long bit in one of the books where he's trying to learn how to walk like a human and not walk like a Murderbot because they walk differently. And he's like, okay, he's like trying to figure that out. But the look he has should be able to pass as human when he needs to. So that's fine, right? What struck me is that it felt comical. It felt like a Fifth Element kind of vibe, which is not what I think of when I think of Murderbot. And I thought to myself, I don't object to anything they're showing me. In fact, the in-universe media is something I was very much hoping they would figure out how to show us. So I'm very excited about that. I took it as an Easter egg for the fans of like, hey, don't forget Sanctuary Moon. We're going to show you. We even cast it well. But I'm like, they're playing it a little sillier than I would have. I wonder what people who don't know the books will think of that. And it sounds like it worked.
Can I throw you a lifeline to as you're adrift in a sea of skepticism, skiing on a sea of skepticism.
I'm drinking a ski while skiing on a ski of skepticism.
You can with whiskey. You could hold on to the same sentiment that I felt for the bizarre trailer for Andor season 2. Like, they're playing classic Rocky Tom Petty sounding Revolution music, doing wacky comedic beats. And if you'll remember, what I said at the time is, that's the kind of bonkers move you only get to make when you're so convinced that the hardcores are going to love it, that you can shoot this trailer right over their heads because you know for a fact that you have the goods and they're going to thank you at the end.
And in fact, I feel like that was even farther over the heads than this one, because nothing Skarsgård did stood out as wrong to me. I was like, oh no, he's got Murderbot down pretty good. Like, I like his portrayal. Some of the people in the small company, I'm like, oh my God, that's exactly how I pictured them. So I'm excited in that respect. It was just the tone of it was surprising to me. And I was thinking like, oh yeah, this is what Brian was talking about with the Tom Petty thing. Like, they are making this trailer for others, knowing I'm going to watch it no matter what. So that's good to know. HBO did the thing where it's so certain season 2 of Last of Us will do well that it went ahead and greenlighted season 3 before season 2 even premiered on Sunday. I did watch Last of Us episode 1. So I'm curious, what you think of the fact that they're like confident. They're like, yep, we'll make a third season, and what you thought of the first episode.
Yeah, I think previously we had talked a bit about about focus groups, or it's like, I think I would have 5 years ago speculated that, the product doesn't really get finalized until the run up last minute. And then that's when they really know what they have. And that's when they really see focus group responses. So that's probably the right time to redo it. But now, as I continue to pay attention to design and incentives, I'm going to add another layer on that as well and say that almost certainly they had decided to renew this months ago.
Yeah.
But this is a free press release to remind everyone to watch. You know, this taps into the fixed action pattern of social proof, authority, and the kind of confidence moved.
Yeah. Did you watch the first episode?
You know, for whatever reason, again, design is on my mind. I opened up HBO Max and it just automatically took me to the American Sign Language version.
It did that to me too.
Okay, I'm glad I wasn't crazy because I actually, first of all, I invested 5 minutes trying to figure out how to not watch that. I ended up Googling The Last of Us American Sign Language. Press release comes up proudly saying we have American Sign Language performed by so-and-so. I'm like, I know, I can tell. It's right here. Yeah. How do I not? And eventually I gave up. You know what I did, Tom? I hit the button so that it grayed out the bottom with the UI. So at least I wasn't distracted by the guy moving around down there. And then eventually I realized that they actually have two separate feeds. Yeah. It's a totally different show because
Eileen
the video
is the
layer.
One that noticed that when I was looking at settings, she's like, "Wait, it says ASL version in the title when it comes up." I'm like, "Oh," and then we went and found the other version.
So I'm going to bet that both of us experienced the same thing. We went to HBO Max, and without thinking about it, we saw the words "The Last of Us," and meanwhile,
I clicked on it from the Apple TV menu of like, "There's a new episode of Last of Us." I'm like, "Great, play it." And it took me to Max and started playing it.
Almost certainly what that means is somebody at Max said, "Hey, do you just want me to throw it up there? Which version? Or put it on the carousel?" It's like, well, I guess the more newsy thing is the whatever.
Yeah,
and think about incentives. Like our experience of that confusion and the resolution, that was 15 extra minutes we spent with that story. And it led to us talking about it now. So all things being equal, I'm not going to say that was a dastardly on purpose thing, but I wouldn't blame them if they were slow to fix it because the results were everyone is thinking a little bit more about it.
And did you like episode 1?
I only watched the first 15 minutes. To be honest, I'm cheating because I'm trying to get Josie to watch it with me, but she's really skeptical of the actor playing Abby because the shoulders aren't broad enough. I think
the producers addressed that and they had a whole long explanation of, and I don't want to go into it because it's a little bit spoilery, but
Josie is there for that muscly Abby. And you can talk all you want. She wants her eyeballs on some muscly Abby.
Well, the short version that's non-spoilery is this was the best actor for this role. And we didn't think that the muscly Abby was so important to the character that we couldn't portray a good story. And this is the person we wanted to cast. And we didn't want to not cast her just because she wasn't muscly enough.
Yeah.
Amazon Prime Video.
In which case, I'd say then CGI some muscles on Abby if you want Josie to watch.
It goes further than that, but that would be the spoilery part. Amazon Prime Video is developing Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon as a series based on the book series by Wong Dulu. It involves the writer and executive producer Jason Ning, who did Lucifer and The Brother's Son, and Ronald D. Moore, who did Outlander, For All Mankind, and of course Battlestar Galactica.
That sounds extraordinary. I never, it was the wrong time when Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon came out. I was too familiar with the genre, so I had a backlash response to America breathlessly saying, "Did you know foreign movies are cool?" And so maybe this is an opportunity for me to give the story its due.
My second date with Eileen, we went to see Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
So you hated it. Or either that or you didn't see much of it.
I put my arm around her.
So there was hand-to-hand.
It was a simpler time. The original 1977 cinematic release of Star Wars will be shown on the big screen in London. This part is part of the British Film Institute's Film on Film Festival, June 12th.
I don't want to ascribe to George Lucas pro wrestling level ability to play the heel when 20 years ago he was shouting, no one shall ever see the original ever. Just so we all breathlessly get excited to watch the original. He's like, oh, you're so smart. Look at you watching it again. Oh,
I don't even own it. It's Disney's decision.
I know, but whatever.
But I set this up. It was me.
I'm Jar Jar.
I am Jar Jar. Jar Jar Lucas. Graham Norton will appear in an episode of Doctor Who this season. Doctor Who premiered this weekend as well. The episode will air May 17th. It revolves around an interstellar singing contest similar to Eurovision. And now I will explain to Brian why this is interesting. When I travel to watch Eurovision in May, I often travel to the United Kingdom because
by tunnel, right?
Yes. That's I take the channel from America to the United Kingdom because Graham Norton's commentary on Eurovision is part of what makes it so enjoyable.
Got it.
He is in a tradition. He wasn't the one who even originated this style. He was the heir to this, but they make fun of it. In a gentle way, in a wry British humor way, but he pokes fun, and it is hilarious to hear his commentary laid over. If you just watch the Eurovision feed, you don't get any of that. So you got to watch it on the BBC. And so bringing him to the Doctor Who, where they're going to have an intergalactic Eurovision, basically, is fantastic. And I can't.
Yeah. So and he'll have like a fifth eye in the back of his head or something.
Exactly. And then finally, in 2026, Sky will premiere a UK edition of Saturday Night Live. Lorne Michaels will executive produce the UK version. Versions have been tried internationally. There's a whole long list of them in the Wikipedia before. Only South Korea has a currently airing officially licensed version of SNL outside the United States, and it's on Coupang, which is a streaming service in South Korea. So we're getting a third Saturday Night Live, official Saturday Night Live starting next year.
This is, in a weird way, has a parallel to the Netflix story. It's just a regionally specified version, because I guarantee you their style guide, the beats, all that are going to match note for note. They're going to recruit the same flavor of strata of talent from the same locations, give them the same guardrails, and it could be great.
Yeah, and British comedy is top notch. So the only problem with doing SNL in the UK is that you have so much other excellent sketch comedy going on in the country that you have to compete with for talent and attention. But I'll be interested to see what they come up with. Let's move on to the buried treasure.
Most people want to know why they suddenly got rich.
Buried treasure.
I spent the weekend watching Coachella on YouTube, which longtime listeners of Cordkillers know has become a tradition in the Eileen Rivera, Tom Merritt household. We call it Couchella, and we didn't come up with that, but that's what people call it when you sit on your couch and watch Coachella. They have gotten so good at this, Brian. They've gone from like, yeah, I guess we'll give you a stream of some of the shows. Maybe some of them will be live, maybe they won't, to a full service, multiple grids that you can choose from. So there's like 8 stages, but you can have 4 stages on the screen at once. You can click into a stage and make it full screen and then click back out to your grid. You can just highlight a stage and listen to different ones. And when there's nothing on a stage, and you highlight it, it will tell you, here's who's live on the other stages. If you want to switch to that feed, it's better than being there in many respects because you could just hop back and forth and experience them.
Yeah, it reminds me a bit of when I figured out that I was never going to E3 again. Was like one of the early years of streaming on the internet, where it's like, nope, it's always a front row seat, and I'm in the AC, and there's no lines to just watch it all be streamed. Now, having said that, I would imagine that if you're a single, young, attractive person, it's probably not as good.
Yeah,
to
so
watch
not a
from
problem
home.
for me.
Yeah. On which? Oh, you're gonna say all.
On which what?
On which front? The single, younger, attractive.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, to your point, like we were able to watch Jenny Kim and then immediately switch over to watch Megan Thee Stallion, which we would not have been able to do, right? If we were there, they're at different stages. And even though you're at the same festival, just moving through the crowd would have meant you got there halfway through the second set, but it was click away. It's pretty amazing. If you got something, oh wait, sorry, Brian, what have you been watching? I forgot.
Man,
we didn't start with you this time.
it's been a weird thing. Again, we're talking about the Netflix thing. Like, we already kind of experienced that the prestige content. A lot of people are already betrothed to someone on it, and you're not allowed to watch it with others. And so, like, I didn't watch all of The Last of Us because I want to watch it with Josie and hopefully Bonnie too, if all our schedules can make it happen. And meanwhile, I tried on. I saw the beginning of Hacks. But I didn't have time. Hacks, I do have permission to watch all by myself, and I will. But the stuff I did get to watch a couple more episodes of The Studio on Apple TV Plus. Are you watching that, Tom?
No. To your point, Eileen and I had to agree to let her watch a show on her own, and because we just didn't have enough time. We watched Last of Us together. I watched Doctor Who alone. I watched the first episode of Hacks alone. I have not gotten to The Studio because we both are interested in watching that.
Yeah. Well, so the Studio is growing on me. I thought it was a little bit cliche at first. The second episode blew me away, the one shot. And now by episode 4, I'm getting what they're about. I don't think this is a heavy spoiler. I don't think this is a show that suffers from spoilers, but the movie they're working on is being shot on film. So film's a theme. A canister of film that has all the best parts goes missing. That reel is missing. It just so happens that it's cold and the movie is basically a knockoff of Chinatown. So to keep warm and to cover up the bad dye job that he got, he's wearing a trench coat and a hat. And because he's spun up about his anxiety, he has to talk to his voice memo app about how he's feeling as he pieces together his journey of trying to find this very important missing reel of film. And you realize, oh, I get it. They're just doing a film noir detective movie within
amazing.
stuff.
I love that.
And it's like, once you let it be as silly as it sounds, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, and I wouldn't be surprised from that. From Seth Rogen.
Well, and let me just give a shouts out to something I've only watched the first 15 minutes of, but it got put on my radar from a podcast. But the show is called Social Studies, and it's on Hulu. It's a documentary about teenagers. If you wonder what the teens are looking at on their screens, this is something that, as far as I know, ain't never been done before. They got dozens and dozens of teenagers whose parents agreed to let them film everything. The kids agreed to let everything be filmed. And with a couple of technological hacks, they have complete unbroken screen recordings of everything on their phone at all times. So you get to capture these extraordinary moments where somebody mishears something during a school assembly, and you get to see them visibly react, pull out their phone, you get to see them Googling and then say, it's a total lie. It's a total lie. And so you're seeing their thought process, and then you see the resolution of, I misheard. But meanwhile, it's a peek into what was previously completely opaque part of teens' lives.
So it's more than just they're locked into the skibbity, these kids. Like, you actually see what they're doing. That's pretty cool.
No. You find out everything from, Frank talk about drug use, what kind of pornography they consume. It turns out an awful lot of teens make money on the side selling foot pics, and they all know about it, and they don't feel great about it, but $75 is $75.
Man, that explains something in Dungeon Crawler Carl now. Thank you. If you got something we should be on the lookout for, just words, please. Email us, cordkillers@gmail.com. Brian, do you like music?
I've heard of it. I like some of their early work.
How do you keep up on music in this busy world in which we live in when there's so much news and so little time?
Well, I don't know about you guys, but I have right here on my podcast feed a little thing called Daily Music Headlines.
That's right, Brian. You're a genius. Daily Music Headlines keeps you up to date on the world of music in only 5 minutes a day. Hosted by Brian Ibbett and my wife, Eileen Rivera, depending on which day you listen. No, all kidding aside, this is one of the best accidents of podcasting I've ever had happen to me. I was asking about an entirely different idea to Brian Ibbett, and he said, but if you ever want to do a music headline show, let me know. And I'm like, let's do it. And then over that weekend, he and Hammond Chamberlain and a little help from our producer here, Amos, we had a 5-minute daily music headline show ready to go. We launched it on March 24th, and it is great. If you're like, I like music, I just kind of have a hard time keeping up with everything that's happening. And I just want to know the big things, so I'm not feeling left out, like who's touring, what's number one on Billboard, all that kind of stuff. Go check it out. You can make it one of your flash briefings on your voice assistant, however you do that sort of stuff. dailymusicheadlines.com for more.
By the way, Tom, that little moment, so many of those happy accidents, like I can't believe, just happen to say, those are all, we're back to design. This is back to the great sorting and AI. That is a sign of an inefficient market, and AI is going to make those opportunities, like you're going to be able to just like, what are all the things you'd like to be? And you're just gonna be able to pick from a menu. It's like, somebody's got to be the person who does this. And then you're going to be able to go. And then when you don't want the job, somebody else will just slot in.
It's almost there too. Like this
Right?
was so fast to be able to turn around. I'm tempted to
and
be
it's
like,
all
that's
gonna happen
kind of what
faster
we
and
did,
faster.
but it's going to be even faster.
So the downside is we're all going to make less money, but the good news is all of us can make as much money as we feel like putting in the effort, and for whatever type of work it is.
Well, I put on the effort to create a Scanning the Horizon segment for you, and here's what happened.
Send a scanning crew aboard.
Scanning the horizon!
Netflix released a game to go along with Black Mirror, which also, we didn't even talk about that. Black Mirror came out this weekend. And
Too much good TV. I don't like it, Tom. I need my TV to slow down.
Where are we back at peak TV? Netflix released a game called Thronglets that goes along with one of the episodes in the new season of Black Mirror called Plaything. It's a Sims Tamagotchi style game, but you can play the game that is in the episode.
Do you think, Tom, that this glut of excellent television is a slow motion artifact of the combination pandemic and writer's strike, and then now finally everything's just all...
A little bit. I do. I think it's a little bit that, but it's also interesting that I think we're old, so our brains are trained to think, well, the new shows come out in September, and then you occasionally get them in January. What's going on? I think this is the new beginning of the season. The beginning of the season is now April and May. I
know
think
what?
That's what we're seeing.
Okay. So consider, let's talk about structure and design. Why was the fall season so important? The fall season was, everybody was establishing, you went from the chaos of the summer, and then everybody is establishing their new habits and pattern, which was why it's highly competitive in September and August to establish
You're
those
going back
patterns.
to school. People will be inside. The weather's going to get cooler. You know, we want to establish that pattern that they're going to have when they're inside the rest of the year.
Right. But now consider the new reality where we tend to want to binge our stuff. And everybody knows, like books, TV shows are like novels now, where it's like, they'd like it if everybody bought it on day one. But the truth is, they want to be one of your summer reads. And so now we're in the new fall premiere season. I think you're 100%
people
right.
when they're on spring break.
Or talking about coming home and we got to watch. And we just talked about how people are betrothed to watch content together during the summers when there's maximum flexibility and people can sell. The great sorting is a thing, Tom.
I'm back to work. So I'm watching TV in the evening has become, I can't wait till I get some time off so I can binge X television episode. Yeah. It's exactly what's going on. Speaking of which, Netflix is testing a search that uses OpenAI's large language models. It's being tried in Australia and New Zealand. I mean, see the entire previous episode of Cordkillers for coming implications of that sort of thing. But this is something that should make your search a little better. Natural language search.
Yeah.
UK Culture, Media and Sport Committee has recommended a 5% tax on UK streaming subscriber revenue, and Netflix has said that if they do that, the price of Netflix in the UK will rise by a coincidental 5%.
Yeah.
Since 2023, South Korean content has been second only to U.S. content for total viewing hours recorded. This, according to a Netflix self-reported viewing data report. South Korea content consistently represents 8 to 9% of viewing hours on Netflix. That's right ahead of content from the UK at 7 to 8% and Japanese content at 4 to 5%. So kind of counterintuitive when you think about like, okay, most of the world can consume content in English. That's why you have content in English a lot of times, because it often is the second language of somebody. So U.S. content also being the home of Hollywood, that's going to lead. You'd think the U.K. would be number 2. You think maybe, I don't know, Australia, Canada, something like that would be number 2. U.K. number 3, South Korea number 2.
Yeah, there's a whole thread we could chase another time. Essentially, in the branding of awesome content that is not in the United States, Korea was just enough better consistently, just enough to be first across the finish line. Remember that the horse that makes 10,000 times more money wins by a nose, not by 10,000 times as much. So Korean television was just that much better that it became first in the mind. Once you're first in the mind, there's a virtuous cycle where you earn more and more real estate, and
there's a theory that one of the reasons Korean culture is so popular, and this goes beyond just Korean TV, but also K-pop and K-beauty and all of that, is that the Korean market is good enough for you to spin up a product and get a market, but it's not big enough for you to sustain. And so you have to go international. Whereas in Japan, you've got a slightly bigger market where it's big enough, obviously, for you to spin up a product, and then you can comfortably sell it domestically, and you're not as motivated to push it beyond your borders.
Yeah.
HBO is officially confirming the first cast members for the Harry Potter TV series. John Lithgow, as we have discussed before, is officially now been announced as Albus Dumbledore. Janet McTeer is going to be McGonagall. I'm not as familiar with McTeer. She was in The White Queen and Tumbleweeds. Papa Esidu from Gangs of London is Severus Snape. Nick Frost, Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, is Hagrid.
Oh, that tracks.
Yeah. So I imagine the drumbeat of announcements is going to start coming on this. Then they'll get into production. We won't hear from it for a while, and then it'll be a big old thing. So there you go. That is that. Let's move on to the chatter.
You've got mail.
Big thanks to Rob Carpenter, who pointed out that Amazon was at CinemaCon for the first time, probably because they acquired MGM, but streamers don't usually go to CinemaCon. You don't see Netflix going to CinemaCon, so that was significant to have Amazon there at all. Mark writes, I'm guessing you watched the highest rated episode on the full experience because that is what most people watched. But I would guess that a better episode would be the one that aired the prior week. That's the episode that likely inspired people to watch the next week by word of mouth. Mark, I totally get why you think that. However, it's a great opportunity for us to explain that while we use the word rated, we don't mean highest viewing ratings. We mean the highest quality rating according to IMDb. So we look at the IMDb rating. So it's the episode that is rated highest in quality by people on IMDb. We're trying to find the quote unquote best episode. There are
if you're
dozens of other ways to
engineering,
determine the best episode, but that's the one we're going with.
Yeah, basically, if the coordinate system is left-right is chronologically first and last, north-south is quality axis of best and worst.
Yeah, so it's not highest rated as in most people viewed it or watched it. It is highest rated as in highest quality, and lowest same sort of thing. So there you go. But thank you for that. Sean the Dad writes, Brian, Tom, and Amos. Me and the missus watched Viola Davis in G20, which is a popcorn flick reminiscent of the action movies of the 80s and 90s. Was there necessary suspension of disbelief? Sure. but it's a fun ride and had quips that are funny. Most importantly for my wife was the explanation as to why the female action hero didn't wear high heels to what was supposed to be a black tie event that turned into a constant close combat with found weapons. Unlike in every other action movie we've watched, where the leading actress is expected to run full speed in stiletto heels. It's a fun movie. Just don't waste time thinking of questions like, how would that even work? And sit back and enjoy. Thank you, Sean. And as your boss, writes John from Nashville, I wanted to send compliments to Brian for his foreign 8-year-olds joke. I got it and laughed an appropriate amount.
Thank you. You're welcome.
And by the way, Brian, just so you know, every time I've talked about my trip to Japan afterwards, I have been carefully saying my 4-year-old and 8-year-old nieces.
Surrounded by all these 4 and 8-year-olds.
Finally, episode 545. Brian is too low and sounds distant. Tom is just fine. Emoji. So yes, we actually worked on this quite a bit. There's some quirk in Brian's setup where he comes through low and then Amos has to go in and manually adjust that volume. He thought he had adjusted it enough last time, but he'll double check that and make sure in the audio version. Although in the YouTube version, if you're watching the YouTube version, you may be noticing that, but we're still trying to track down what that is.
Yeah.
Well, that is it for this episode of Cord Killers. Our website is cordkillers.com. Our email address is cordkillers@gmail.com, and we're live at twitch.tv/nightattack Tuesdays at 5:30 p.m. Eastern, 2:30 p.m. Pacific. I reckon we'll talk to you next time.